Hi, I'm Tim Clark, and I hope you enjoy the video that you're about to watch. If so, please let me know by clicking the subscribe button. Today we're visiting the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum on Route 66 in Joliet, Illinois. And our guest is the museum's CEO and founder, Ron Romero. Welcome, Ron.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Ron, let's go back in time. What inspired you to build this museum?
Well, I've been a lifelong musician and certainly inspired by the music itself, but going to a lot of other museums. There's all sorts of things in Nashville and, of course, Cleveland and Washington State, all over. And I just love to see all the history of the music from all these different states and realize that there was nothing that was going on here in Illinois. And this was originally going to be taken to another museum as an exhibit. So the thesis I wrote up was how Illinois music had influenced the world. And a great example is that the Rolling Stones got their name from a Muddy Waters song that they wrote. I can't get no satisfaction was from Muddy Waters' song I Can't Be Satisfied. That Led Zeppelin used all of Willie Dixon's music in their first album and beyond. I mean, there's a lot of influence here in Illinois.
Can you tell me about what genres or what decades of music your museum focuses on?
Well, you know, despite being the name containing the words rock and roll, we want to kind of embrace and promote music, all music, on any genres. And the fact of the matter is that people get upset when they say, oh, rock and roll, and you're inducting so-and-so. But the issue is that rock and roll existed from, say, mid-50s to early 60s, and that was it. So if we stuck truly to rock and roll, it would be a short window. As it is, the things that you have to consider is that if country and blues had a baby, it would be rock and roll. So there's a lot of things that influence rock and roll, and then rock and roll influenced a lot of other music. You know, there's elements of gospel, there's elements of blues, there's elements of country and rock and roll. And you know, people sometimes get hung up on the name rock and roll, but it's all, and we have a really great history of country music in Illinois that we have of gospel music and all sorts of things here in Illinois.
So tell me about decades, like years, decades. How far does your museum go forward?
So it's a great question because we had to have a place to start. And where the story starts in the museum is with blues. There was something called the Great Migration that happened with African-American community coming from the South and looking for better opportunities in the North. And with them, they brought acoustic blues. And they came to a place that's here in Chicago area called Maxwell Street, where it was an open-air, multicultural market. And blues was one of the types of music that was there. But in order to be heard, the acoustic blues artists plugged in, they added a drummer, they added a bass player, they added a singer, and it became Chicago blues. So that's kind of where we start the music. Now, where do we end the music? I don't know that we're going to ever end it, because I think it's something that evolves quite a bit. And like the Hall of Fame, there's certain criteria. You have to be in existence at least 20 years before you're eligible to be included. So every year somebody falls into that 20-year category, and it continues to grow. So I don't think it'll ever stop growing.
Great. Now, I was doing some research, and your museum has several facets. Let's start with your exhibits. Can you share a few exhibits that you have on display?
Yeah, you know, as I just mentioned, the Great Migration is the very first thing that you see when you come in. There's an exhibit about Maxwell Street and how blues got plugged in and became Chicago blues. Great exhibit about Chess Records, which is where a lot of the blues artists recorded. But not only blues, I mean, it was very well known for blues, but there was a turning point at Chess Records that was very important to rock and roll history. which was that a guy from St. Louis came up here and recorded all of his records. His name was Chuck Berry.
Oh,
So he came up here, and of course he wasn't blues. I think a lot of the guys that were recording at Chess Records, like Muddy Waters and Little Walter and some of the other guys, were like, "What's this new music? This isn't blues on our Chess Records." But that was kind of the turning point when it turned to rock and roll. I talk a lot about blues. There's 3 floors here. The very first floor is based on blues. And the reason I chose to do that is because when you go into Chess Records, there's a great little quote from Willie Dixon in there that says that blues is the roots and the rest is the fruits, meaning that a lot of things came from blues. So my thought was, okay, here's our foundation. We're going to tell the story about blues on this floor. The second floor will have a majority of exhibit space of all genres, all sorts of things, and third floor as well. Plus, third floor is also a performance venue where people can come in and actually perform as well.
great. Now, tell me about the Hall of Fame in your museum.
So this year is our 3rd year for the Hall of Fame. We started it, believe it or not, it was supposed to happen in March of 2020, and we all know what happened in March of 2020. So we got shut down for about a year because of COVID. But we were, it was really interesting. We had Chicago and Cheap Trick and Ides of March and a lot of great bands that were inducted in the first year. Styx came in the second year. Nat King Cole, Sam Cooke, Chuck Berry, they were all inducted as well. And the really interesting thing for me was I'm kind of a kid in a candy shop. I love music. And to be able to do this stuff, and of course Chuck Berry and some of the others have passed, Sam Cooke, but their families, their sons and daughters were here. Muddy Waters' son was here and actually performed for us, Mud Morganfield. And, it's an honor and a pleasure for me to get to meet all these great people, all my heroes, the musicians who are still with us. Last year I got to play with REO Speedwagon.
Oh, wow.
3/5 of REO Speedwagon was here. And, one of the perks of being the guy that put this together is I get to play in the house band for the for the Hall of Fame. And Kevin Cronin from REO Speedwagon came in. He was here for the first 2 years. And what a wonderful guy. What an honor to play with him. Just loved it.
Yeah, I'm sure that would have been really spectacular. Now, speaking of music, etc., you also have a radio station in the museum. Is that correct?
We do. Actually, one of the exhibits that we have is something called Airwaves to Internet. And we have an old 1960s radio station here with all the gear from the whole radio station. That actually started here in Joliet. And right next to that is our radio station, which I'm sitting in right now. And this is, it's roadtorockradio.net, and it's all Illinois music. And we're probably the only one in the country that doesn't go by genre. So you're going to hear maybe Louis Armstrong right next to the Smashing Pumpkins. The idea is that all the music comes from Illinois. And the nice thing is we have a lot of Illinois radio personalities that do voiceovers on this specifically for the Rock and Roll Museum.
Great. I saw on your website a reference to WLS, and I have to tell you, when I was a child, born in the late 50s, growing up through the 60s and early 70s, no matter where you were in the Midwest, at night, you turned on WLS.
Yeah, WLS. Well, actually, we had 2 radio stations here about that same time. There was WLS and WCFL, and they both had what was called 50,000 watts of clear channel, and you could hear it east to west coast. Those were the guys that, and that's one of the reasons why we couldn't leave DJs. DJs are eligible to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And it's important because we've got people like Dick Biondi, who's known, across the United States. He was the first one to play the Beatles music when they came to the United States. He was, pardon the pun, but very instrumental in getting a lot of musicians their start, especially here in Illinois as well. So, the music was, I remember as a kid going, my older brother driving, and we would listen to the radio in the car, and we'd be flipping between WLS and WCFL.
Exactly.
We'd like one song better than the other, and we just kept going back and forth.
Yep. And I still hear the jingles in my mind as we speak about this. Yeah.
Oh,
the
yeah.
call letters. Yeah. Well, tell me about your Route 66 travelers. Most of our viewers on this channel are Route 66 travelers. So do Route 66 travelers stop and visit your museum?
Well, let me say hello to the roadies to start with. We love you. Actually, that's one of the reasons why we picked Route 66 is because we know it's a well-traveled road. It's a very important history in our country. And it's nice we have a sign-in sheet as people come to visit now. And not only do we see people from around the United States, which thrills me, and the cool thing about that is that it's not just people who are on Route 66 traveling up. You know, there's people coming from East Coast, New York, other places, but around the world. So we have, I was looking at the sheet the other day, we have several people from Portugal, from Spain, from Austria, Czech Republic. We get a lot of the guys coming from Czech Republic on their bike trips. And you build up these relationships with these folks who are traveling, and some of them are tour guides that we see quite often. But it's just a love. And I had to ask, we had a very large group here, and I said, and they were from Czech Republic driving on their motorcycles through. And I said, I don't understand, what's the draw from Czech Republic to Illinois and to Route 66 specifically? And they're like, it's folklore. We see it in the movies. We see all this stuff. So I think a lot of us here take that history for granted. And we really need to get that message out there about Route 66 and the great. When I was a kid, we lived in Chicago, and I traveled about an hour and a half, hour and some minutes to Bloomington, Illinois, which is where my aunt lived with my mom and dad. And there was no big highways at the time. We took Route 66. So I remember them building the bigger highway, which is now Route 55 in Illinois. And I kept saying as a kid, I'm never going to be on that road. I want to stay on Route 66.
Yep. Yeah, I hear so many people reference Route 66 as representing the time of Americana in our country. And that's a big draw. It really is.
I think that's very true. And people say to me, you know, well, Route 66 starts in Chicago, but we kind of skip that. I don't know that Chicago really embraces Route 66 like the rest of Route 66. Not that I'm, dissing anything that they're saying, but it's a little more urban there where it starts. And I think Route 66 is exactly what you said. I think it's Americana. It's good old, apple pie and baseball and just our roots.
Exactly. Now, you barely touched on events. Do you want to talk about events at all in your museum?
We have lots of events, inside and out, actually. More outside right now as we're continuing to do a renovation here. But we've done things like Wine, Jazz, and Arts Fest in our local park here. We have a car show that we do the second Tuesday of every month through the summer. We just did our last one for the summer. We have Women Who Rock. During Women Recognition Month, we're doing something for blues. So we try to celebrate music during those times. Any other thing is, like the wine, jazz, and art. To me, that's important because we kind of expose art and jazz to people who may not necessarily live it or listen to it. But the wine certainly is an attraction for people. So it's the nice thing about that is we get community. All the events that we do are designed to bring people out. We want them to see our town. Our town, Joliet, here was a beautiful, beautiful city at one time. It was very packed with people. There were stores here like you wouldn't believe. And then it changed. And now, over the last decade or so, it's coming back to the glory that it used to be. And this is one of the reasons why we chose Joliet. The city itself is putting in I think about $10,000 into a green space for city center. They're doing a lot of infrastructure stuff. So Joliet is going through some pretty important changes right now.
That's great. Now, Have you, speaking of, we were talking about Route 66 visitors, have you ever had any celebrity visitors just pop in unannounced, like by surprise?
Yeah, it's funny, we do. They come by. Not only do they stop by and come in, on occasion, we'll get, excuse me, we'll get somebody who calls. So, as an example, one of the ladies was in the office, and I heard her on the phone, and she says, "Well, let me check to make sure Mr. Romero's in the office. Hold on a second. May I ask who's calling?" And she went, "Oh, Dennis. Oh, okay." And she got real nervous, and she's trying to put it on hold, and she couldn't find the hold. And I go, "What's going on?" And she goes, "You gotta call." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Just hold on. Just give me the phone. I'll take it." It was Dennis DeYoung from Styx, who's a major hero of mine. Joe Mantegna, actor Joe Mantegna called. He's on Criminal Minds. He was in Godfather. He was in so many movies. And he called out of the clear blue. And it's a funny thing because he said, I called him back. He left a message and I called him back. And Joe, yeah, this is Ron Romero from the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum. I said, first question off the bat, is this the Joe Mantegna? And as soon as he said, yes, this is him, one and the same, I could hear it in his voice because he has a very distinctive voice. And I go, what do we owe the honor of you calling? And he said, well, I've been watching what you're doing in Illinois. He's been living in California, of course, that's where his work is. And he says, I've been watching what you're doing there. I'm real excited. He says, you probably don't know, but I used to play in a band in the 60s. And I said, yeah, the Apocryphals. And he said, you knew that? I said, absolutely, I knew that. So, he got involved. He's one of what we call our ambassadors, along with Jim Peterick from the Ides of March and Survivor. We have a few local radio celebrities that are on board. We have the bass player, Chuck Colbert from the American Breed. And they kind of help bring awareness. They're kind of our influencers to bring people around. They take interviews. They do all sorts of stuff for us. So good people.
Great. Well, how can viewers get more information about your museum, such as your upcoming events, your operating schedule, things like that?
I think everything you want to know and a little bit more is on our website. You can go to roadtorock.org, and it's ROADTOROCK.org. And there you will find all sorts of things, the things that are going on, something about exhibits, how we're doing on our renovation of this building, and the events and things like that. The renovation, if I may, the renovation itself, we bought this building in 2019. And, of course, top of 2020, we ran into that same problem with the COVID. So we've been doing this. This is a grassroots organization. I didn't come in as a developer. I didn't come in as a millionaire to say I want to do all this stuff. So everything that we do, we raise money for. We grant write. We have now we have about 1,000 charter members from around the country. And some of them are annual renewables. Some of them are lifetime members, and they all help to keep this up and running. Our events are important. Our gift shop is important to keep us up and running as we're building this. We did get a few government grants to help with the renovation, mostly infrastructure. We bought a building that was built in 1930, built like a tank, a really, really good building. They don't build them like this anymore. But, in 1930, they had a little different concept of how electric should be run and how, heat and air conditioning. Air conditioning, I don't think existed that early, but so we had to deal with a lot of that stuff. And those projects are going very well. It takes a little bit of time to do this. But in comparison, Cleveland took 12 years and $93 million. Yeah. And we're I think, 4 or 5 years right now into this, and our budget was about 6.5. Actually, it's $6.6 million, and we did that because of Route 66.
Oh, cool.
So
I like that.
So that's our budget.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, can people also follow you on Facebook? And if so, what's your page?
Sure. It's Illinois Rock and Roll Museum.
Okay.
You could follow that. I get a lot of people following me personally as well on my personal page. I post a lot of stuff about museum and music, and of course it's just Ron Romero. And but yeah, we've got a lot of social media going on for the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum.
Great.
I think there's 30,000 followers right now, something
Wow.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Anything else you want to add before we close out?
No, just wanted, like I said, we're excited about our roadies coming through and saying hello to everybody. We really want to embrace what Route 66 is and that Americana kind of that thought. I just want to say it's an honor to meet all the people that come through here, people who are excited about Route 66, people who are excited about music, people who are excited about the the new changes here in Joliet. So, as I mentioned, I'm a kid in a candy store. I love my job.
That's great. Well, thanks a lot for your time today, Ron. And for those viewers, when you're traveling Route 66 through Joliet, be sure to stop by the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum on Route 66. Thank you for watching this video. You know, I just love Route 66 and the era of Americana that Route 66 represents. Producing these videos is my way of giving back to Route 66 and to promote Route 66 to people not just in the United States, but to people all around the world. Now, if you enjoy watching these videos, please let me know by clicking the subscribe button. And if you want to be notified when new videos are posted, then just simply ring the bell.